if I could go back and not change the outcome, but give myself advice, I'd look myself in the mirror and I'd say, you're carrying all of this and you think it makes you strong, but instead it's just a shield. Tyler.
What's up? What's up?
You sent me an email earlier and I was in the middle of something to which I had to hit pause on and ruminate, I think that's the right word, on your questions, because I didn't realize we were going to go so deep into regret.
Yeah.
And so today we're going to talk about personal regret and professional regret, and talk about things that I've never publicly talked about. And then even at the end of this podcast, AI almost makes me cry. That's just the truth.
I don't know where this came from today. Just something that I've been thinking a lot about, and decided that I wanted to sit down and craft a conversation around this. And I think that, while doing so, I realized that there's so many valuable takeaways for our listeners. And I hope that this conversation, and if we put together like a worksheet with these questions and an exercise that you can do yourself, I hope that our listeners find a ton of motivation and a deeper understanding of not only who we are, but who they are as people. And that we are all absolutely imperfect. We do not have it figured out. And that we're just constantly trying to create a life worth of progress and not necessarily perfection. So I hope that this conversation provides that for you.
Yeah. So without further ado, let's get into it.
This podcast is brought to you by Andersen. We all know Andersen is a trusted name for windows and patio doors, but here's something you might not know. They also make impressive moving glass walls called big doors. And these moving glass walls can help you capitalize on the indoor-outdoor market, even in a rough climate. What's more impressive is that Andersen also has options for new homes and remodels. Their folding outswing door was recently used in a Michigan remodel where it opened up an entire wall of 1950s era home. And in Minnesota, their 6-panel multi-glide door brought out the full beauty of a North Shore cabin retreat. These Andersen big doors bring the outdoors in during summer and provide ample views and weather protection in winter. And with Andersen's proven track record and depth of support and training, installing them is easier than you might think. For more information, head over to andersenwindows.com/moderncraftsman.
This podcast is also brought to you by Buildertrend. If you're still running your jobs off a whiteboard, Dropbox, or your phone, well, then you're not alone. But you don't have to keep doing it that way. Buildertrend brings all your tools into one platform. Schedule, change orders, estimates, payments, it's all connected. If you're ready to stop duct taping your systems together, head to buildertrend.com/MC demo to schedule a free demo and see how it works. Seriously. Pull over, put down your drill, go to buildertrend.com/MC demo right now and schedule your call. You really can't afford to wait.
This podcast is brought to you by Harnish. First impressions matter, and your crew's appearance speaks volumes. Harnish Workwear helps your brand exude a commanding presence with custom branded gear that reflects the quality of your workmanship. Their H-Label program delivers premium work apparel personalized with your logo, colors, and details. It's more than a uniform, it's a walking representation of your brand. Clean, consistent, and built to perform. If you're ready to elevate your image and stand out from the competition, visit harnishworkwear.com and start building your brand from the ground up.
I just spent the last half hour thinking about what you just emailed me.
Oh, did you? Well, that's good.
It is good. I was like, for fuck's sake, Tyler's going to really dig.
Dude, I've been thinking about this a lot. Obviously, there's the personal aspect of it, the business aspect of it. So to give the listeners, I guess, a little bit of a background here, just you and me recording today, and I wanted to dig into just the two of us sitting down and sharing some of the greatest personal and professional regrets that we've had and how they've impacted who we are, shaped who we are today. And for me, this isn't this isn't a way to just like reiterate things that we've done wrong or mistakes that we've made, but how we can move forward, how you can progress in life from this, how you can better yourself. And I wanted to just take some time to dig into that again. The some of the biggest regrets that you've had, both personally and professionally.
I feel like professional was so much easier to answer, and then I realized you were like, oh, what about personal?
I feel like it like did mine. I think stem from the same like personal or I guess like personality flaws, not personal, but like personality traits, characteristic flaws. I feel like for myself that both of them kind of stem from the same thing, but two completely different, unique situations and circumstances. But at the core of it,
Yeah.
it's really coming from like a fundamental personality flaw that I have. So again, I think that the why I wanted to have this conversation is that as a community, as human beings, as contractors, that we all fail. We all struggle each and every day. And I think that, we live with regrets, both personally and professionally. And I think that often that dictates and shapes how we approach life, how we approach business, how we deal with our significant other, our friends, our clients. And I wanted to try and peel away some of the layers and expose like the deeper lessons there. And this exercise for myself, I did. I realized, a lot of this stemmed from. And I think the big takeaway for me is I hope that a lot of our listeners can find some motivation, some inspiration, and a little bit of a deeper understanding of not only who we are, the struggles that we have, the insecurities that we have, how they affect us each and every day, but how they also experience similar things. That you don't have to live a life of perfection, business of perfection. It's about progress in life. It's about progress in business. And I wanted to be able to reflect on that internally, but then also for our listeners to have an opportunity to do that as well.
What was your biggest personal regret?
So, and it's funny that we're going to dig into this because later on, one of the questions, which is like, have you shared this publicly and why not? Um, so, mine is with regard to um, like sports as a younger man, right? Through like middle school, high school. And one of the reasons why I don't share this a lot is because I don't want this to come off as like, hey, I had the opportunity to be this person or that person. And like I peaked in high school and this is where, I'm hanging my hat on this, like, oh, I could have done this back in high school. And I didn't want it to come off in that regard. Like, I think that there's so many deeper underlying lessons there. And I didn't want this to be like a high school hero type story. But I think that there's like pain, disappointment, regret, and it's so much bigger than that. And it does give like a much larger glimpse into so many of the personal flaws and insecurities that I had as a young child, as an adult, and something that I think I've worked on and progressed. But like a little bit of a backstory, I grew up multiple sports as a young kid, like always athletic, always wanting to be the best, working really hard. And then I kind of settled into wrestling around middle school and stopped participating in all other sports. In once I got into high school, like I was still playing football, but I ended up quitting and I just focused on wrestling. So I was wrestling club teams, year round tournaments, high school, and coming down to like what I would think would be the end of my high school career. I had some opportunities to do some pretty big things, and I ended up getting hurt. And I think that my biggest regret is that I allowed that injury um, to be somewhat of a crutch for my failure, or what I would describe as failure, because I think that there was nothing I could do about the injury, but it was a substantial injury. And like I had two options. I could either call it quits at that point. It was like halfway through my senior season, or I could try and rehab, push off surgery, get a brace, and try and compete, which is ultimately what I wanted to do. But I think that in the back of my head, I always had an out at that point, right? If things didn't go according to plan or things didn't go the way that I saw them fit, I could always lean on the fact that I got hurt and that I had a torn ACL, um, and that I wasn't 100%. So, like, I was so afraid of failure and I had such little belief in myself that when presented with the opportunity of, like, you're going to prepare, you're going to do the best that you can do, or you're going to be afraid, you're going to have fear. The fear of failure overtook a lot of, um, like, if I was presented with fear of failing versus putting my head down, accepting failure for whatever reason it was, I chose to kind of belittle myself to having an out and being more afraid of failing and controlling my own failure. So, like, what would be my last um, wrestling match in high school was in the state tournament, and I was leading the match, and I was just so tired and I was so hurt, and I was afraid of losing. I was afraid of not meeting my full potential. And I can distinctly remember basically just giving up and being like, I just want this all to be over. Um, and I had potential to do so much more, and I didn't. Like, I mentally chose to give up and to throw in the towel, and for it to be over. And to this day, that's something that I haven't forgotten about. I believe that I used my injury somewhat as like a scapegoat for a way for me to control my failure, control my own destiny. And I always had one foot out the door, and that I don't think that I believed in myself enough or mentally was strong enough to believe in myself. And I think that I allowed the fear of failing to overpower my like desire to be successful or to succeed at any cost.
What do you think the difference is between you at that age and the other kid that does, like, fast forward, it's like now you understand that, you don't lean on things for failure. You're basically looking to be the best and try to continually to optimize your life and make more money and be more successful and et cetera, et cetera. But at that age, it wasn't like you weren't painted in a corner like you have to figure this out, like forget your injury, but there's kids that are like that in teenagers. I guess where I'm going is, do you think that that is a product of your environment? Do you think that people can be coached that way? Like, I think about me now, versus me 10 years ago. I am way more focused on the success of myself and my business and my family and kind of down the line than I was 10 years ago. And but I think that that's all self motivated. I don't think I don't think I grew into that feeling.
Yeah. I do believe so. Like, one thing that I do now, I try and do this with my kids, and I do it with myself, is that, like, when I look back on it, I had a coach who would tell me, like, you can beat anyone, and I never believed him. Right? Like, he believed in
Why?
me, so I never believed in him because I didn't believe in myself.
Yeah.
And like, in hindsight right now, being 39 and looking back on 17, 18-year-old Tyler, I can see that I had some fundamental insecurities and flaws and lack of self-belief, that I just didn't believe him. And I can look at it now and say that, like, Coach Ritz knew something that I didn't know, or that he believed in something that I didn't believe in. And I think ultimately that came down to, like, when you get to that level, when you get to like an elite level, anyone can win on any given day. It comes down to, like, who believes in it more, who wants it more. And I think that I was so, and still to this day, there's certain aspects of my life where I'm so afraid of failing that I either won't do something, or I'll almost have one foot out the door. So if it doesn't pan out, like this is why it didn't pan out. And I think that
Yeah.
that's an insecurity. That's a self confidence type of thing. But I look at it now where like I tell my kids, or if I'm coaching Selby softball team, that like you won't realize this now. I'm not going to say that you can beat this other team just by willing it, but like at some point down the road you're going to remember what I'm telling you, and you're going to understand that you could have, had you believed in yourselves. It
Hmm.
just takes a level of maturation. It takes a level of like, if I hadn't experienced this at this young age, and this isn't something that like I've lived with my entire life, to feel, that I invested at that point like my entire life into something, to mentally make a decision to basically check out because it was too hard. um it it's something that I live with, and like is really a tough pill to swallow. So I look at how I mentor people, how I teach kids, how I raise my children, and I just like, you don't want to live with regret. That's one thing that you don't want to do. So position yourself um, to be able to live life to the fullest, to be able to try your hardest, to put your best foot forward, and know that you never truly gave up. And I think that it can be such an impactful decision
Hmm.
in your life. It's not about the winning, it's not about the losing. It's giving yourself an opportunity to reach your full potential, leaving it all out on the line so that you have a life without regrets. I think that that's so important, um, and that we shouldn't fear failure. Um, we should fear not positioning ourselves or not giving us an opportunity to truly succeed.
Yeah, because I mean, I think failure is rooted in when you don't when you give up.
Yep.
And I feel like I talk about this a lot, especially with what we have going on. But it's all on the line, and there's I've said 100 times I operate better when I'm painted in a corner and when like my back's against the wall and I need to figure it out. And I wish that sometimes I wish that wasn't the case. Um, but I mean, the easiest thing to do is just not to do it. And that's with any decision. It's like, okay, I could do this, but it's easier if I just don't. And as a kid, even as a young adult, I think that was, I just won't do it. And then it's, I'm okay. My life is fine. I don't need to do it. And when, it's like when you hear an interview from someone that's uber successful and it's like, what'd it take? How'd you do it? Like, what's the secret? And everyone has a cliche, or what you would think is just this cliche answer. It's like, you just have to do it.
Yeah.
It's like, no, 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 that's not it. What's the secret? It's like, no, man, like you just, when everyone tells you not to do something and you believe in it and you do it and it fails, yeah, I know that feeling. It's like, and usually at that point you don't do it again. Yeah, yeah, I kept doing it. I kept doing it until it was unreasonable that it wouldn't succeed. And I think that is it's a mentally draining process. And I think
Yeah.
that's when you think about some of the most successful people in the world, like they are just, they're drained, they're burnt out. They don't have this balance in life. They've dedicated their life and to, their work. And that's neither good nor bad. It depends on, what you deem good or bad, right?
Yeah.
As a businessman or as a father or as a husband, as a friend. And I think we talk a lot about business, right? And those that are listening are tradespeople, contractors, builders, renovation, whatever it is that you do. Oftentimes this is centered around career and your life's work, but this goes with everything. It's like when people ask me, like, I don't know how you do it with 4 kids. I'm like, it's not like it's easy. It would have been easier to not have kids.
Yeah.
It's pure chaos.
I think that like there's also a delicate balance between living in fear, right? Like
Mhm.
fear of not reaching your full potential. I don't think that that's a healthy way to go about life, where it's like, I have such a limited time. I need to do this. I need to do that. I'm fearful of what I might not accomplish. I think it needs, for me, it needs to be rooted in like, I am so disappointed and regretful and shameful of myself for a situation like this
Hmm.
because I knew that I had more in the tank. And like that's the toughest pill for me to swallow, is that I knew I didn't do my best work. I knew that I
Hmm.
didn't reach my full potential. I knew that I had more in the tank. And I think that when you look at it from that vantage point, where it's like, could you have done more? If you didn't, if you tried your hardest, if your hardest like wasn't even relatively the most amount of effort you could have put into it, but you were okay with it, yeah, like I was only willing to put 75% effort
Sure.
into it. Fine, I can live with that. But I knew that I wanted more than that. And I just like, I had a lapse of judgment. I had insecurities. I was tired. I was mentally exhausted. Like, there's a long backstory behind it, which, like, I don't really need to go into. But I think at the end of the day, when I look at everything in my life up to this point, even from when I was 18 till now, 2x that age, like most of my regrets come from insecurities. They come from a lack of confidence. They come from me having one foot out the door because I was afraid of failing. And
Hmm.
like, I can recall having conversations where it's like, what's the worst thing that happens, right? You lose, like it
Yeah.
doesn't work out. And I can wrap my head around that. It's never that bad. But like, when you're on the line,
Hmm.
when you are faced with that situation, there's so much anxiety and there's so much fear, and it's so overwhelming. And it takes a special person to be able to perform at their best. And I think that I prepared myself in a lot of ways to do that. And just like the situations where I was not strong enough to step up to the plate are the situations where I'm the most upset with myself and what I have the most regret, and that I can't I can't really find peace with.
Hmm.
It's difficult for me to find peace with those situations where I wanted so much more for myself and I prepared for so much more. But when it came down to it, I allowed fear to creep in and rob me of the opportunity to be the best version of myself. And that's what I struggle with, both personally and professionally.
I'm gonna take this to a dark place for a minute because it's something I think about a lot, and I think about, and I mean this legitimately. Like, this is not something I think about in terms of. I'm going to talk about suicide, and I'm not
Yeah.
saying I think about suicide in terms of killing myself, but it's a very delicate subject. I get that. My where I'm going with this is that I think suicide is, there's so many there's so many emotions around it, but think about the guys and girls that ultimately choose to end their life because of a situation they're in, and they feel as though the situation is so bad that it would be better off if they just you know kicked it. And you hear the stories of that happening, and then someone coming to the table and be like, dude, if I knew he needed the money, I would have just given him the money just
Mm-hmm.
just to have him here. And I think about that because a lot, in the sense that there are these situations that we get in, whether it's money, whether it's work, whether it's relationship troubles, whether it's whatever the difficulty might be. We oftentimes are we consider these extreme examples or these extreme outcomes as to how bad they are, and there's no way out, when the reality is there's always a way out. And in choosing your life over asking every single person that like that's the quote unquote easy way out, right? Like, if you said, hey, I know 1,000 people, I'm gonna ask all 1,000, if they don't give me it, then hey, like, I'm probably gonna commit suicide. Like, that's a fucked up thing to say, but that is the reality of a lot of people in these tough situations is they choose these extreme, outcomes. And I'm gonna get away from that for a minute because I am reminded of just how small I am individually and what my life is compared to the entire world. Every time, like, it's just something I think about when I fly.
Hmm.
When that plane takes off, I don't know what it is about California. I think it's because you fly over the water and then loop back. But when you do that and I look down, it's like, dude, look how many houses there are.
Yeah.
Like millions of these. And if you just associate, like, hey, all of those people have some sort of pocket of money, some bigger than others. It's like that money exists. And if that's the thing that you're struggling with, I mean, there's like someone, like, ultimately you can get it. And if whatever it is, I'm using money as an example because I think that is a huge stress in many people's life. But the reality is we don't typically exhaust all of our options. We find what is easiest. And in your example, Tyler, it's you could have exhausted the ability to recover and to come back stronger and to push through it and risk getting hurt again and again and again, but ultimately, like, to lead to what might have wanted was that career in wrestling.
Yeah.
And you fast forward to 39 years old, you look back, it's like, man, like, I wish I did that, and I wish I had the the mindset I have today. And I think
And it's not for like the accolades
no.
or like the notoriety or anything like that. It's just like it was such a huge part of my life. And I feel like so many people invested in that, not only myself, and so many people believed in me. And it was like the first time as a young adult in those formative years that I like truly felt as though I let myself down and I let other people down.
Mhm.
And like, maybe in the grand scheme of things in my life now, there's so many bigger things, but like that's just one thing. When it was a simpler time in my life, like that was the biggest thing in my life at that moment. And I had a decision to make, and I chose at that point what was the easier route. And it's
Mhm.
something that I've lived with. And like, at the end of the day, that has shaped who I am. That has defined who I am. That is the reason why I'm so driven and I
Mhm.
work so hard and I want so much good for so many people and I want to help everyone. Like it is a defining characteristic and experience within my life, but it's still something like one of the things, have you made peace with this? Like, no, I haven't made peace with it. I'm
Mhm.
okay with it. I understand all facets of this experience, but it's still not something that I'm like okay with and I've made peace with, because I just think that, when I was truly tested, that I succumbed to fear. And that's always been just a really, really tough pill to swallow for me. But enough about me. How about your your biggest personal regret?
I
And I also like, it's actually very difficult to say this. Like even when I typed up this outline, I was like, I don't want to give Nick all this information with my like answers on it. It's like very uncomfortable. And I think if you record this podcast multiple times, it would be easier. And I feel like you're cutting to the chase because it's like, do they need to know all of this? And it would probably be helpful. But I also think it's really tough to have these conversations.
Yeah, and truthfully, that's why I sat there for so long thinking about, like, how much of this do I share, and what, and ultimately, like, what value it brings to a conversation. Um, the thing that it's an ongoing thing, to be totally honest. It's not something I look back in a situation where it's like, I wish I had done that.
Yeah.
But through my life, I I think my biggest regret is continuing to try to be everything for everyone
Hmm.
and seek validation through others. And I've never actually talked about that publicly, and I've told very few people about it. Um, But interestingly, it's why I ended up here. And I'll go back as far as being a kid. Um, and when I would do things as a kid, I'd want someone to be proud about it. I'd want someone like to let me know that I'm doing a good job. It
Yep.
wasn't that I needed the constant like you're doing great, like that fake,
Affirmation.
affirmation. It was that I felt even as a kid that I would work incredibly hard and I just wanted to be recognized for a little bit every once in a while.
Yep.
And as I grew up, it was work. And I started work when I was 11 years old. I mean, at 11 years old, I would work Saturdays with my dad and my grandfather, and every day during the summer. My three siblings would go down to our beach house and or our beach cottage. They would hang out there all summer, and I would just stay home with my dad and I'd work. But I loved it. But it was there's very specific moments I remember in life. Like I can play out the scene being at work and doing something and just being wanting someone to validate that what I'm doing is right. And even in school, I would be I'd be in different friend groups, and I would like change myself for that. And I don't think that I mean, I'm guessing that that's not abnormal. I think a lot of kids do this.
Yeah.
Um, but I was just constant like, who am I? Like, like, and not, and rather than asking myself what I needed or what I need, it was always, what can I do for this other person, and prioritizing, them and making sure that I was a good person to them or doing what they needed, or making sure I upheld what I thought was my responsibility to them. And as I grew up, message boards were a huge thing, and I started finding commonality between people that just shared similar interests. My friends just didn't. Some of my friends did, and I'm still, I would say, friendly with a lot of them, but we didn't see the same thing. We didn't. It was always a give situation, where message boards and then Instagram and then our community around social media and things like that was easier because it was an immediate in as to who you are and how we are similar, and we can, we're thinking along the same wavelength, rather than me having to kind of do something or feel indebted to do something in order to, whether it was earn friendship or earn credibility or whatever. I'm kind of going down a rabbit hole, but when I think about the things that I regret, I can comfortably say there's not a lot in my life that I feel as though I wish I had done. People ask me, do I wish I didn't work as much as a kid? No, I actually really enjoyed that. I think it's, part of what made me who I am today. And I don't feel as though I missed out on anything. But I do think that I prioritized a lot of the wrong things as a young adult.
So if you could go back, and that's not go back in the sense that you could change the outcome, but I think that this would probably be a benefit to you. Like if you could you could talk to the younger version of you. And I think that a lot of times that's really hard to actually imagine or do. And so what I typically do that helps, it's like, what if it's not me? What if I'm my child, right?
Mm.
Where it's like, and your child was feeling the way that you did when you were young. Like, what would you say to your child? Like, we allow things in our lives to kind of manifest themselves or like continue because we're really hard on ourselves. But like you wouldn't allow that if it was your child. So like sometimes looking at it from the perspective of, hey, if my child was experiencing what you experienced as a young kid, like what would you say to them? What would you have wished somebody had said to that younger version of you? Just to help you at this point in your life not feel, because it's obviously something that you still struggle with. Like what do you think would have been helpful?
Well, I think on one side, I've learned a lot about being a parent because of the things that I dealt with as a kid, and feel as though I'm more I'm definitely I definitely pay attention more to recognizing what my kids do and understanding, how important it is to recognize those moments or those thoughts and encourage that. But on the flip side, if I'm speaking to my kid and they feel that way, you know, I don't know. I
I mean, for me, right? And like for me, I look at that and it's like you have to understand that no matter how hard you try, like somebody else's happiness isn't going to make you happy. So if you're relying on, and this is actually like what my professional failure is, but if you're relying on the happiness of somebody else or being a people pleaser
yeah.
or just striving to make an experience perfect for somebody else, that like you're never truly going to be happy, because there's just too much in other people's hands. So for me, it's like, if you were a friend of mine or you were a child of mine, or I was looking at somebody who was going through this, like for me, that's the conversation where it's like, you have to do things because you want to do them, not
Hmm.
because you're looking for validation. And I'm not saying that that's you are, but like when you rely and you base so much of your identity and your self-worth on people being happy with
Yeah.
what you've done or how you've treated them or how you've helped them, like it's gonna be bottomless. And at some point, like it's going to be so fatiguing
Hmm.
because you're looking for externalities to make you happy internally. And that's just a really tough thing to do, especially when like other people don't necessarily want to be happy.
Yeah. I mean, this is I've done a lot of self reflecting, and some of you might know, and I know Tyler, you obviously do, but 6 months ago or so, Meg and I were just we were never in a bad place. We were just struggling to communicate, and we just said, let's go to therapy. We got to work this out. Like we got to get outside perspective on this and just work through these situations because we're our life is chaotic, and this is only gonna get worse.
Mm-hmm.
And last week was our last session, and she was like, "You guys are great. Like that you have clarity." But I remember the moment I had clarity because we were working, and I went into that thinking, "This is she's going to." I went into that thinking she's going to tell Meg this is how you got to act in this situation, and then she'll give me some advice, and then we would be great. But that wasn't it at all. It was working through us individually, and for me specifically, I came to the realization that you touched on a minute ago. I just want everyone to always be happy. And when someone isn't happy, I have a very hard time accepting that. And I want to fix it, and I want to resolve the issue immediately. And Meg and or many women, there's probably plenty of people on here that would agree, don't want that. They don't want to come up with a resolution. They just want to be mad for a minute.
Yeah.
And I had said to our therapist, I was like, I realize that I just need to accept the fact that like, I don't live in this world that it will always be happy. And that's okay. And that's part of having emotions. And I need to accept that. And when it arises, accept it and allow it to play out, and then see how see how that resolves. And immediately, like I'd be in a situation, you know, Meg would be upset about something, and I would have this internal dialogue. All right, allow this to play out because I know you want to fix it, Nick, and I know you want to ask what's wrong, and you want to get to the root issue, and then talk about it, and then figure out how we prevent it from ever happening again. But that's going to make the situation worse.
And that's also not life. Like
Not
you
life,
can't have happiness without the other end of the spectrum. And like
right?
realistically, you're not supposed to be happy all the time. Like that's an emotion. It's not like a state of being.
Exactly.
And like you're going to have times when you're happy. You're going to have times when you're sad. You're going to have times where you kind of feel meh. And that like the goal is to have a little bit more happiness than the other emotions, I would
Mhm.
say. But like happiness is just like this fleeting experience that you
Yeah,
can't hold on to. And if you were happy all the time, that would just be your normal and it wouldn't feel like happiness.
it's like living in Laguna Beach when it's just 70 degrees every single day of your life. It's
Yeah.
like it shouldn't be. You
Yeah.
should experience the seasons. but yeah, that situation, I remember that day. I let it play out. 5 minutes later, back like she's good. We're happy. We're chatting. We're having dinner. If that was 2 months earlier, we wouldn't have talked that entire night. We would
Hmm.
have like went to bed mad at each other, and it would have just been because I would have been like, I need to fix this. I need to fix this.
Yeah.
And it's and I think about that when you ask the question about like what is your biggest personal regret? It's not it's ultimately not getting to that realization sooner.
Yeah. Do you
And
do
okay,
you think that like any sort of pride, fear, or ego has like shaped why you want people to be like happy or happy with you or pleased with the experience with you?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think most of what we do in life is ego driven. Like regardless if you have like you think you have an ego or not, what we do is, I mean, there's ego tied to everything.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I
I mean,
think that
like, how would it make you feel, right, if you can't fix someone, or if somebody's not happy with you, whether it's
it
your
would
wife, your kid, a friend, a client? Like, I think
it
that's a huge
it
driver
burns
for a
me
lot
up.
of who we are. Yeah,
It's, I mean, when you get that email from a client that just pissed off, I mean, that you try to do everything to make it right.
dude. And the like most fucked up thing is typically that has nothing to do with you. Like maybe yeah, they're
Right.
upset about something, but it's like something else in their life or a
Hmm.
culmination of events in their life or stress that comes together and they're going to explode on you
Yes.
because that you're just like in the wrong place at the wrong time and they can
So
take it out on you and you're now basing your happiness and your well-being on somebody who's taking shit out on you for no reason other than just like, hey, I'm stressed out right now and this thing's pissing me off. So that's, I mean, I did it the other day to my kids, right? Where I was like stressed out about shit and they hadn't been doing their chores. And yeah, they should have been doing their chores, but like I came in and flipped out that nobody was doing their chores and it's just on me and mommy. And like, that is absolutely true and something that frustrates me. But that wasn't the reason why I was feeling that way. I just
yeah.
took it out on them.
Hmm. I mean, it's yeah, and in that situation, it's like, all right, they're pissed off. Let me be the solution, and that's who like it's the good guy, it's the nice guy mentality.
Yeah.
I read this book called No More Mr. Nice Guy. It's actually a great book. It's about relationships um, and that actually opened my eyes to really like what I was experiencing and why I wanted to resolve things. And it's with clients, like getting into the professional side of it. It's you know I've had some really difficult clients. Many of them you know the stories about, and despite how they treated me, I would sit there and I would wait and I would try to resolve it. And the reality is I burnt a lot of time doing that. And I think about, moving into the professional regrets. That's what I regret the most, is wasting my time with people that didn't value what we do, and not, and part B of that is not being hyper focused earlier. And I think I know when I am hyper focused on something and it's just, I'm going to do this and do it over and over and over and over, I make incredible amount of progress because I'm relentless with it. I will, if I need to do something, I will do it. And unfortunately, part of my personality drives me to do these things like last minute. So then I'm like forced to work in overtime on it. But when I'm focused, I can make a lot of progress very quickly. But the problem is when I'm doing that and I'm making progress, to me it feels like I am gaining more time. So now I can diversify and get into something else.
Do you think that like the path that you went down initially that you wish you wouldn't have gone down was a result of you like following your instincts and what you felt was right, or was it like bad advice? Was it lessons that you had learned, or
It
like
was,
an example that somebody set?
yeah, I think professionally, you mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think professionally, I had this mentality that I wasn't ready for the big jobs because people told me I wasn't ready for the big jobs, and that I need to grow, and I need to put my time in, and I need to wait my turn. And I think the reality is, if I had ignored that advice and just went right to what I wanted to be doing, I would have been doing it by now.
Did your dad tell you that?
No,
It's funny
no,
because my like that's something that my dad told me. Like, you won't make money until you're X age because people won't be willing to pay you and this that. It was like
no.
there was certain truth to that, but I don't think it was as much everyone else as much as the way that I viewed myself.
I
Like, I
don't.
just carried myself differently as I became more confident, and
Mm.
that coincided with being older.
Yeah, I think I definitely didn't have the confidence either.
Yeah.
I think I know I struggled with that, and ultimately, I, my dad wanted to build a house. I said, let me build it, and I basically used that to launch into building new homes. And that's what I wanted to do from the beginning, is build, not,
Hmm.
renovations were great, and they were cool, but you know, I was just taking on anything and everything, right? I'm just, one project after the other, big, small, when you look at how many projects we've done, it's like 312 projects.
Yeah.
But if I go back and look at some of those contracts are $500,
Hmm.
and it's just because it would be that, I mean, I remember first 4 years of business, I installed railings at a church. It was like that was one of my jobs, and and that's all fine. And it was just the fact that I personally didn't feel like I was ready for it, primarily because of the advice I was given, is that I need to build this, I need to build up to it. I also didn't have a business. I was just a contractor.
Yeah. So
I
what?
didn't.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just. It wasn't. It was nothing. Nothing was real. It was just I'm trading time for money, and my books were a mess, and I had no process, and I had employees that I knew nothing about. I mean, it wasn't it wasn't until I sat down and actually built, what I want the business to be, and compared it to what I was doing. Until you do that exercise, it's very hard to understand, how you get to where you want to be.
Yeah, I think you're just going through the motions, and it's so, it's you're on a treadmill and you can't get off, and you're not going anywhere. And it's like you can't stop, you can't go faster, you can't do anything but just stay where you are,
Mm-hmm.
which isn't usually a good place. Do you think that like, as far as the cost of these regrets and the decisions that you made in the path that you took, obviously there's financial impacts of that, it impacts your reputation, but how do you think like that impacted you mentally and either stunted progress, made you work harder? What were the impacts of being in the position that you were for you mentally?
It was real tough. I think I ignored a lot of the signs, especially around clients, and I just I would continually convince myself that I could change them, or I could get them to turn around and understand the value of what we do. And every time we did that, we'd just be in a position that would drain the life out of me. And you talk about your kids and kind of snapping at your kids. I remember, we had this very difficult client, and he called me on a Saturday, and my kids came upstairs all excited about something, and I snapped, and it was, I just that I went to the store that day, and I bought a second phone. I shut my work phone off, and I had a second phone, and I did that for like 6 months because I thought that was the way I would separate the work life. And ultimately, I trained my mind to understand that, work is work, and there's nothing that is so important that it has to take away from my kids being excited about something. And that was hard. So if it meant, like, mentally, I think that I went through, um just like very challenging times, and frankly times that I felt like giving up.
So, what do you think you've done? Fast forward, 10 years at this point. Like, what have you worked on, either personally, like
Mm.
for your business, or have you put systems in place to help you make sure that you're not
It's
living in the past, that you're progressing, that you're growing, that you're not making those same mistakes over and over again?
I don't I actually I mean, yes, we have systems in place and we measure things and we understand where we're going, and when things feel tough, like there's a roadmap to show that it's not going to always be tough. That's all great, but I think the mindset that I've just gotten to where it's hard right now, but it won't always be hard. And it was, you talk about it earlier, but when I ran the marathon the first time, I mean, it would have been a hell of a lot easier if I just stopped.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was at I think mile 20, and I just started crying. And I'm not a crier. Like, before that moment, I don't know if I'd cried in 10 years. And I didn't know what the fuck was going on. I come around the corner. I'm like, why am I crying? I have no idea what's going on. My body is just like, I'm absolutely exhausted. And I remember I'm like, I'm just gonna stop. And I was like, wait, why would I stop? There's 6 more miles. It's like, yeah, but it's like you could just stop and be done with this emotion, and your body will stop hurting, and you get to the finish line, you cross the finish line, and you stop and you're in pain for a minute, and then all of a sudden you're fine.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that like that emotional breakdown was more so just that, like an emotional breakdown more so
Yeah.
than a physical breakdown?
No, it had nothing to do physically.
Yeah.
I wasn't in so much pain. It was all mental. And I think I think it was a combination of many things, but I remember coming around a corner and just people screaming and looking right at me, telling me like, you got this, like you're going to do this. And up until that point, I'd never run a marathon. And it's like, holy fuck, I'm actually going to do this. And that was, you know, like him or not, David Goggins, I read his book, and that was I mean, truthfully, that's why I ran that marathon. And, I read his book, and I think it's called Can't Hurt Me. And he talks about just, the ability to do something regardless of the physical state that your body is in. And in the book, it's very aggressive, and he talks about the fact that he's a psychopath, right? Like in many ways, like does unbelievable things. But I remember listening to him and be like, dude, I can do this. Like
Yeah.
if he can do it at that scale, why can't I go out and run 26 miles? And he said something in that book, and I don't remember the exact number, but he basically said, when you feel like you are at capacity, like 100%, like you've exhausted everything in your well-being to actually get this done, you're at 70%. And he probably, I mean, he made that up, right? Like it's completely just like this made up, you know, idea of where you're at from a capacity perspective. But when he said that, for me, I was like, he's right. Like you're at the point where you feel like you should stop doing it. Like, and I had this conversation. He's like, yeah, but what if you break a bone or rip a tendon, or like, sure, but that doesn't mean that's just something that happens.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you can't keep running if you have a broken bone. It's like, why not? I mean, you could. Like, I'm not encouraging that, but that doesn't mean you physically can't keep going. And it's this, it's a very, again, it's a very aggressive mindset. But the point is, for me, you asked what I have changed. I've just changed the mindset around, I'm not going to be here forever. I have a window to live on this planet. I want to do things. There's things that I want to accomplish for me, not for anyone else. And for a long time, I was focused on everyone else, the clients, the family, the friends, the peers, whoever. And why not just only do what I want to do, and go after the one thing that I feel as though I'm that truly makes me happy. And it will be incredibly challenging, and there will be many opportunities to not do it and not have the support, and plenty of people tell me not to, this, you shouldn't do it this way.
Do
But
you think
why?
that there's like a connection between obviously the mental and physical side of things, but like you are leaning on a physical experience and pushing through that mentally to like drive a lot of decisions and serving as motivations for your business, which is like completely independent of business, right? Like you tell somebody you're going to train and run a marathon, and then you're using that as motivation for how you're approaching business and life. Do you think that that happens a lot for you? Like, are you relying on lessons and experiences
Yeah.
that are completely independent and isolated from our
Yes.
industry or from work to serve as motivators for you?
Yes. And in both directions. And I think the truth of that, I think makes me feel, what's the word, like someone would think, based, not that I'm crazy, but that I'm delusional.
Yeah.
I think there's this, there is this like very fine line of delusion. And for me, I think that I have to walk on the slight side of delusion. And going back to your coach, believe that I can do that. Even if everything else is stacked against me, it's like, nah, I'm gonna do that.
I mean,
I'm
even if it
do
doesn't
this.
happen, like if you don't believe it's going to, like, whether it happens or not doesn't really matter. That's like, regardless, it
The
doesn't
outcome
matter.
is the
But if,
outcome.
yeah, if you don't believe that it's going to happen, it's never going to happen.
Right.
Like, you have to at least give yourself the opportunity
That'd be
to
like
do that.
it happening, or not happening, and be like, yeah, but you know what? I never really believed it was gonna happen anyway. It's
But
like,
it's accountability, right? And like I think a lot of
well, to
people
your
are
point earlier.
afraid to put that type of accountability on themselves because
Mm,
then they have to show up. Like there was I forget the guy's name, but he ran like the Leadville Marathon, which is like the toughest or
mhm,
whatever the running event is. It's like the toughest thing in the world. He had never trained for it. He had never done it. He had never even ran like an ultra marathon or anything. And he went on these like message boards and was like, I'm going to break this long standing record that was, I don't know how many years like that somebody had placed that had these like crazy blood oxygen levels that like nobody else could ever touch. And he went like, basically was like, I'm going to break this record. And he's like, I don't really know
David
if I
Roach.
would, yeah, like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that or not, but like he had to put it out there and he had to create that accountability for himself because now he's like, yo, I said it, I
Hmm.
got to live up to this or else I'm gonna get torched. And I think like that's the first step in believing in yourself is saying it out loud, telling other, and like a lot of people, you think people who are going to quit smoking, going to quit drinking, going to start exercising, going to start dieting, like they keep that to themselves or they'll write a
Hmm.
note and put it in their wallet as an accountability tactic. But then like if nobody else knows it and they
You throw the
fail,
note away.
yeah, like it's way easier to fail, right? But if you go out and you like post on your Facebook and your Instagram and you tell your friends and your family and you get on a podcast, you say, I'm going to lose 30 pounds by the end of the year. And you continue to do that, like publicly facing,
Mm.
you better step up to the plate and get that done. And like I think that the accountability is huge and most people fear that accountability because it means that you're gonna have to do this. Like you don't have one foot out the door. You're not living, you're not playing both sides of the coin.
Well,
And at
it's
the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you lose 29 pounds, if you lose 40 pounds. But
right.
like, if you know that you put in the work and you tried your hardest, there's nothing to be ashamed of. You can have the conversation with people like, yeah, that was my goal. I came short, but like, I know that I tried my hardest to do that and I'm healthy and I feel good. And like, I'm proud of what I've done.
It's the that's the delusion I'm talking about,
Yeah.
where it's, outside, when if you don't lose the 30, it's like it's easy for people to, like, yeah, you were delusional to think you could lose the 30. A great, I think one of the best examples of someone like this is Conor McGregor.
Oh yeah.
He without a doubt, the greatest in the world, will win every match, goes into it fully confident, loses, doesn't say a word about it, moves
Yeah.
on. I'm going to win the next one. And he's like, in outside looking in, every that dude's delusional. It's like, is he? Or does he just have this like intense belief that when he does perform, he's actually performing at his absolute best?
Yeah.
It's the same. I mean, same sport, but like same with Jake Paul, like the kid that grew up on Disney, went to Vines, went to YouTube, and then all of a sudden became a professional boxer. And you can say what you want about him, but I mean, he's not a bad boxer, and
I
and he's some same thing. He's like, people think he's delusional, but it's like, I don't know, man. Like, he puts the work in, whether regardless of the outcome of the fight. He's committed to saying that he's going to be the greatest.
It's also just a mindset, like just having the balls to do that. Like, and whether it's you watch, like, I mean, there's only certain sports that I watch, and like, I don't think baseball is quite as much like that. But like, when you look at motocross, where it's like really it's not a team sport and it's an individual sport. Same thing with wrestling, and like they have these interviews with guys, and they're like, "Yeah, I'm going to win this. This is how this is going to happen." And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. But I'm like, even when they go out and say that, and then I'm watching, and I'm like, in the back of my head, I'm like, what if they lose? What if they lose? What if they lose? And like they lose, and it's just like, oh yeah, it didn't work out for me today. I'm going to come back stronger.
Right.
But it's like I can't even wrap my head around. It's not even like delusion. Like they truly 100% believe that they're going to win,
Mm-hmm.
and that's so powerful. And that's something that like I would love to be able to communicate to younger men and women, whether it's in athletics, whether it's in sports, whether it's in relationships, friendships, whatever it may be, that like you have to be your biggest advocate. You have to be your biggest proponent. You have to believe in yourself. And that can be half of the battle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I feel like with time, with experience, with maturation, like you realize that that's going to be such a huge like motivator for you and strength that you have to be able to outperform other people when you believe in yourself. Because when it comes down to it, and like, right, you're looking at two different contractors and they're the best of the best, it's going to be like, who believes in this, who believes in their system, who believes in their process. The same thing from an athletic perspective. Like ultimately it's like the one who's the most successful is going to be the person who is the least fearful and the most confident in what they're doing. Which is, it's so hard as a young man or a young woman to understand that and to balance that with like not being arrogant, right? Having confidence in yourself without being arrogant, I think, is really difficult, especially for younger kids, and understanding how to navigate and walk that line.
Or accept the fact that it's arrogant.
Yeah.
I
It's
mean,
just like with that, you're going to have a very polarizing
sure.
perception and reception of who you are. People are either going to absolutely love you for it or absolutely hate you. It's like the Conor McGregor, right?
I was going to say, like, that's again great example where it's like people love or hate him, but he's just accepted it. He's like,
Yeah.
I don't give a shit what anyone, like, whether you love me or hate me, I literally don't care. And but to the point where I think you're making is, when you insert the arrogance, you're making the belief that much harder.
Yeah.
It's like, it's hard enough to like 100% believe in yourself, and then pile on this like polarizing view of you, and in having that as feedback. I mean, that's difficult. And I think, in our industry, like, talking about social media, right? Like, that is something that we try to avoid, is having these polarizing, views of who we are as professionals. It's like, you can go, if I were to be this insanely polarizing builder that just had these like strong opinions about something, I'd wipe out 50% of the people that potentially would work with me or follow me. And I could own that. I just choose not to. I choose to kind of walk this like more or less diplomatic line of what I'm talking about, and I sway out of my lane every once in a while to, maybe get a rise or to stand strong on an opinion. But it's you're complicating the belief system internally. But I would say that that is potentially a superpower that could help you grow exponentially
I mean,
if you're able to accept it.
do you look at it's literally politics, right? Where like they
Right.
pick the most polarizing topics where you
Mhm.
have to choose a side.
Yeah.
You can't agree with abortion and then, be conservative at the same time. Like that's why they pick it. And like it's the same thing with Conor McGregor. I think for most of us, like I would rather just either people not have an opinion of me or like moderately like me than have
Yeah.
people who love me and then fucking hate me because like I don't know, sometimes it's really hard to shut off the noise of people who hate you. And like
Yeah.
they hate you even more when you succeed.
Mhm.
And like that can be a huge motivator for people, but like that noise is very loud and I think it can be very difficult to turn off.
Especially when you're alone.
Yeah.
When you are with a group or you are in a community, whether it's like digitally or in person, it's easy to, it's like, oh, they hate me because they hate me, right? Like that's a easy to say when you're around a group of people, but then you go home and you're by yourself and you're having a tough day. All of a sudden, the next thing you know, you're hanging out in the group that hates you because now you hate you.
Yeah, and you're like questioning everything that you do. To me that leads to like me questioning myself and my decision,
Yeah.
and I think like
I would
perpetuates
love,
insecurities.
I would love to be able to like not give a shit about that.
Yeah.
It's like, the craziest one. I was at the gym 6:30 in the morning. My phone rings. I'm not answering. It's 6:30 in the morning, and I get this 7-minute, 11-second voicemail about how if I'm going to be someone on YouTube that promotes good craftsmanship, then I better step my fucking game up and do a better job with the insulation install because what I did was absolutely embarrassing and I should never promote that and you're all you're doing is it was like I was like this guy calls me at 6:30 a.m. and leaves me I don't answer and leaves me a voicemail to let me
Yeah.
know that I'm a YouTuber that is
Hack.
like hack. And truthfully it did, like, well, I shouldn't say that. Truthfully it did bother me actually. And I was like fuck. And I went and back. I remember I like wrapped up my set. I go to the office. I watch the video. I'm sitting here like this.
You start questioning what you do immediately.
Yeah, I'm like, hold on, and I'm like pausing it. And I'm like looking. I'm like, what the fuck's he looking at? Like I don't under. So I send it to Rockwell, and I'm like, this was when Dan was with Rockwell. I'm like, Dan, I need a favor. He's like, what's up? I'm like, I just got this voicemail, and he goes, holy shit. I'm like, will you please watch the video and let me know if I'm wrong, like if I did something wrong, like
Yeah.
I be serious, like judge the hell out of it. And he writes back and he goes, dude, this is like a class A install. Great job. I'm like, you're not just saying that. He goes, no. I'm like, okay, I feel better.
Dodged a
And
bullet.
I in the next YouTube video, I was like, hey, so the guy that called me at 6:30 in the morning, I like opened up the video. I'm like, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Class A install, buddy. And but it's you think you get this stuff and it's like you question everything. It's like, do I actually not know what the fuck I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
I've sworn a lot on this podcast, so sorry if your children in the car. But
Yeah. It's I think for me, like my professional regrets are very similar to your personal
mm,
regrets. Where like for most of my career, I focused primarily on making sure my clients were happy rather than my own self, my network. And like I really based my self worth on the acceptance of clients, the success of projects, serving my clients' needs, and I really had like disregarded my own physical, mental well being.
Mhm.
I just threw all of that out the window and like strive for perfection in work, perfection for the experience. Um, and again, in hindsight, this was a lack of confidence, a lack of self esteem, a lack of, like authority in my skill set, my business. And I think that that's where a lot of those feelings and a lot of what I was doing and the professional regrets and how I really approached my business. I think that was the impetus for a lot of that stuff. I've always found it not, I think publicly, um, facing criticism can be difficult, right? Where it's like,
Mhm.
I don't mind having this conversation offline, but when like I can't vouch for my clients, I can't vouch for myself why we did things a certain way, that was always tough. I think it's difficult to be malleable in business and in life. And I think that I always had a tough time being okay with every project and client experience not being seamless.
Mhm.
And it's one of those things where, like, you think about it, there's a lot of pressure trying to achieve perfection. There's a lot of pressure trying to live up to the hype, um, and to market yourself in that way. And I can relate it to, again, athletics, where like somebody has a streak going, right? Where they've gone undefeated for how long, or they've had how many at bats, or they had a hit. And like once they know about that, it's very stressful, and they're almost wishing that the streak would end because then the pressure comes off.
Yeah.
And I think for a long time, like I didn't let the streak end, and I put a ton of pressure on myself to please my clients and make sure that everything was fucking perfect for them. And it just impacted my life, in so many different ways, financially, mentally. Like there were so many negative effects of leading a lifestyle and a business that way.
It's funny when you're saying that. I remember a client I had. It was early in my career, and how we just bent completely over backwards over everything. And I'll never forget. It was like 11:30 at night, and I'm sitting on the couch with Meg, no kids, and I'm like going back and forth with this client, and I'm swinging through emotions. She's like, "Who are you talking to?" I'm like, and I say the client's name, and they're like, "It's 11:30 at night, dude." And I'm like, "Yeah, but like this is when she has the ability to chat and like get through stuff, and I'm just trying to like make this job right." But looking back, it's like that's terrible. Like that's a terrible way to have a relationship with your wife or your girlfriend. Like you're prioritizing this client because they can only communicate with you at 11:30 at night. I mean, this is such an elementary thing to implement, but when I look back, that is a great example of where I was prioritizing everything besides my family.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest, like, and people have probably heard me say this before, but like I realized there was a major problem when my wife would have her hands full with work, with kids, with everything, and she would ask me for a favor, and it would be like, absolutely not. I'm in the middle of doing this. But
Mm-hmm.
then if the tables were turned and I was out with my family and a client called and asked me for help, I would drop everything to help that
Yeah,
client.
yeah.
And I was like, there's something very wrong with this. And I think when I started to shift that perspective, and I'm not saying that now it's like I have shitty client experience or I'm not aiming for perfection. I'm not trying to execute the best I can and create the best user experience and treat my customers well. I'm just putting way less pressure on myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where, you know what? Nobody's perfect. When something goes wrong, not if, but like we'll deal with it. Nothing's being hidden. Like, and I'm still going to execute, and it's still going to be a good client experience, but I'm not going to base my identity, base my happiness, base my self-worth outwardly towards these other people. Like, I'm going to be happy and I'm going to be content with my life, and I'm going to establish a business that is rooted in me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what works for me? What's good for me?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do I want to run a business? What makes me money? What type of client? What makes me happy? what processes are like non-negotiables for me, and then I'm going to fit my work and my career, my client base around that, not the other way around, where it's like I'm basing my entire identity, my entire model, my entire business on what my clients' needs in their program is, and I'm going to go to the ends of the earth to make that happen. And when I started focusing on like, no, you know what? It's about me first and foremost. And I'm going to make sure that whatever my needs are, I'm able to execute to suit my clients' needs. But I'm not going to base everything in my happiness on
Yeah.
what that client's program is, or that client's program needs to fit my agenda as well. Um, and it's been like an absolute game changer for me, as far as not just business but just like lifestyle and being happy and not being stressed beyond belief and not being, like you said, right, you're out with your kids, you're on vacation, something goes wrong. Like I don't have the mentality where I something can go wrong. Like I said it with you, right? We went and we looked at one of your jobs and there was like a major issue, and then we went out to eat afterwards and you just sat there and like ate like nothing was wrong. And I was like, dude, how the hell is he eating right now? Like my stomach would be in knots. Like I don't have, that's not me. I've never been like that. I have difficulty letting stuff go. So I just try not to position myself where I'm ruining a vacation. I'm
Mhm.
ruining an event. I'm ruining dinner with my kids. I'm ruining getting them to sleep because a client is unhappy, or there was an issue at work, or one of my subcontractors messed on there, or I screwed something up myself. Um, and that's been like a huge change. And honestly, like again, I think that all of this comes down to self confidence and understanding that I'm not perfect. Nothing's going to be perfect. We're going to do the best that we can. I understand what I do and what I do well and what I don't do well. And I'm just going to focus on like what makes me happy and doing the best that I can do and being content with that. And I think that you have to be confident in yourself. You have to be confident in your systems, in those processes, in your numbers, in order to be able to like be content with the structure of that. And I think that that's been like a huge thing even for me, as far as the mentoring that I've done and the consulting that I do. So much of the people that I speak with, it's like it's not even as important to be like you have to know your numbers and know what you're doing and understand the business aspect of it, about as just like you're lacking business confidence right now. So
Mhm.
like it doesn't matter if your numbers are right or wrong. When you don't have the confidence to sell what you're doing, the numbers are almost irrelevant. So I think like it's given me an ability to be able to help other people, um, explore some of those things within themselves and develop confidence within themselves, that they're not second guessing everything they're doing. They're not second guessing every decision, every bill that they're paying, everybody that they're hiring, every job that they're taking. They're beginning to understand what works for them, and they can find a client base, that fits that, and ultimately they can lead a life and a business where they're not questioning everything, and not living with like that fear of regret in the back of their heads. That I think that that's like, for me, um, leads to the most happiness. Or and it's not even happiness, as far as like I'm walking around my house like jubilant every day, because that's just not me. But just, not being stressed, not being anxious, being able to be present, right, where it's not like I constantly need to be doing something.
Right.
Just being like okay with being okay. And for a long time I wasn't okay with being okay.
I struggle with that a lot.
Yeah.
It's very difficult for me to just stop. Um, so interestingly, I just I use AI a lot, and I share a lot of information. And I just asked, answer these questions as if you were me based on the information that you know about me. What's one personal regret that still sits with you? And this is what it said: that I put my identity in being needed, and I confuse responsibility with my worth. And I'm so determined to be everything for everyone, my team, my client, my family, that I never asked myself what I needed. And I kept choosing work over presence, proving over connecting. And there were moments with my kids and Megan when I was there, but I wasn't there. Wow, that's weird. That like is making me choke up. And then I said, if I could go back and not change the outcome but give myself advice, is what you asked me. It said I'd look myself in the mirror and I'd say, you're carrying all of this and you think it makes you strong, but instead it's just a shield. Try to let people in, let them help, and be a good man. Being a good man isn't about shouldering it alone. It's about knowing when to stop fighting ghosts and just be where your feet are. The people who love you don't need a hero, they need you, not a version of you that's burnt out to be and too proud to say it.
That's
Damn.
it's pretty
Damn.
crazy.
That's yeah, wow. I yeah. I mean the part
What?
where it says let people in and let them help, that's something that I don't do.
No, not at all. And like, I mean, I would say that I don't know your life completely. But like I can generally tell when something's up, or if you do turn to me because of something that like typically is pretty important, just because you're not somebody who shares a ton.
Mm.
Even, it's like, hey, how's it going? Oh, everything's good. And it's like, no, everything's not. I mean, and it's like you're trying to will that and manifest that into place, which like more power to you. But yeah, like I personally think that part of life is asking for help, opening up, telling
Mm.
people when you're feeling a certain way, because I think that does create that accountability, and it's getting something out loud on paper, and then at that point, it's like, well, if you continue to feel that way and you're not doing anything about it, like it's basically insanity.
Mm.
So I think it does create some accountability for yourself to be able to handle your emotions, deal with your emotions, deal with the things that you're struggling with. And I think it just makes you more approachable, which was part of what I wanted with this conversation and more conversations moving forward is for people to understand that like we are experiencing and have experienced so many things that are similar to what you are, regardless if it's your first day in business or your 100th year in business. Like we're all going through a lot of the same things and struggle with the same things, and looking to grow personally and professionally, and that's really really difficult.
Mm.
And that I can relate to what most people are going through as small business owners. And I can relate to seeing, what you see on social media and what people are doing, the opportunities that they have, and what it might actually be like behind the curtain. Um, and like I can confidently say that like I've established a lifestyle that's pretty good for me. And there's
Mm.
things that could be different and there's things that could be better. But when I look at like the totality of my life, and like the cumulative sum of events and experiences, that I'm in a good position, right? Like it do I regret that? I have regrets in my life, but I don't regret my life.
Yeah.
Like my story, my path, I don't regret that. There's certain aspects of my life that I regret. There's certain things that I have trouble coming to terms with. I don't let them eat at me every day, but there's
Mm-hmm.
things that I would do differently had I been given another chance.
Mm-hmm.
But when I look at like the culmination of my life and the decisions that I've made holistically, like, no, I don't regret it. I'm living an amazing life. I have a balance of work, play, life, love, family, friends. Like I do, and it's not perfect. And I mean, 2 days ago I had a day where I was like, why does everything have to be so hard? And it's not as hard today.
Right.
um, when I look at the big picture, I don't regret the path. I wouldn't say I do things differently. There's certain aspects that I would definitely change and I wouldn't fucking do again. Most of which were when I was much younger. Um, but I think all in all, I'm happy with where things are growing, and I think that there's been a lot of growth that has come out of regret for me, or
Yeah.
or facing potential regret. Like I think that I've grown a lot because of that, which is really important. Like I don't want it to cripple me.
Hmm.
I want it to serve as a motivator for me, or provide like an outlet of growth for me. And I think that it has done that.
I love that.
Thanks, man.
These were good. This is good reflection. I think,
Yeah.
I shared with, if you guys are on the newsletter, you would have gotten my email. It would have been 2 weeks ago about focus. And if you're not, you should sign up for our newsletter. It's completely free. And I write a more in-depth, kind of heartfelt email every Monday. But this is kind of piggybacking off of that topic about focus, and it's one of my biggest weaknesses is my focus. I take on numerous activities and things, all primarily work related, and I don't seem to ever recognize that when I do stop and shed some of that I'm in a better place mentally, and instead I get comfortable and then go add something else to it.
You know, it
Uh,
might not be a bad idea as you're saying this. Like, so I sat down for a while today, like longer than I probably like to admit, when I was coming up with a conversation and like these questions, and like I fully answered like all of these questions that I created for the podcast, and we didn't get into all of them, and I didn't answer all of them on the podcast, but like in retrospect, it was a really, really great exercise. Like nobody was making me do it,
mm,
and I could have wung it, but like it was such an amazing exercise for me to dig into a lot of things personally and professionally. So maybe we can get the like a template of these questions to send out on the newsletter if anyone wants to, go through this exercise for yourself. The reflection was good. And it was I don't want to say gratifying, but like it created a lot of clarity for me.
I think it's what journaling does.
Yeah, I mean
I've
that's
never
what it
been
was.
I'm never much of a journaler, but there's been days, more so when I've had really hard days. I've sat down and just wrote out what I'm feeling. Kind of in the interest that I'd love to look back at it one day when things aren't so hard and be like, man, remember that day?
Yeah.
And I think that it's, going through a conversation like this, it opens a lot of not opportunity, just like a lot of insight as to what you're doing and why you're doing it. And, I'll leave this conversation today and drive home and think about what am I doing that's not for me and why am I doing it?
Yeah, for me it was just like you said, the journaling, the reflection, giving me some really good perspective on where I've come from, what I struggle with, what I could do better, where I'm headed. And like although it took some time for me to do, I think that like when I look big picture, the productivity um and like the positivity that's going to come out of this exercise that I did today, like podcast aside,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to have like a profound effect on how I view things moving forward. So I
Well,
can get that. I can get all that stuff together. Maybe we'll send it out in an email.
if you guys don't get it or want it, shoot us an email, hello@moderncraftsman.co.co. And we'll make sure we get it. But the best way to get it would be to sign up for the newsletter.
Sweet. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Catch you on the next one.
See ya.